Imagine you are walking into a dark room and you light a candle.
Okay.
Why did you light it? I mean, to see the room, obviously. You want to avoid tripping over the furniture.
Right, naturally.
But today, we are diving into an ancient manuscript that argues you've got that entirely backward.
Completely backward.
You didn't light the candle to see the room. You lit the candle so the universe could see you.
It completely flips the script on how we interact with the world around us.
It really does.
Instead of viewing our actions as, a way to manipulate our environment, it reframes them as a way of announcing our presence within it. And that shift in perspective is the beating heart of the stack of sources we're exploring today.
Yeah, so we're looking at a deeply evocative, very mystical text titled The Blue Sacred Swan, Holy Soul Ritual Birth, Mother and Daughter, and Loving Faith Beyond Truth.
It's quite a title.
It is. And for someone like you listening to this who loves dissecting complex ideas and finding the connective tissue between them, mystical texts can sometimes feel, I don't know, a bit unmoored.
Oh, definitely. They can be very abstract.
Right. They often operate at a 10,000-foot elevation. Highly poetic, but very up in the clouds. So our mission for this deep dive is to take this profound cartography of the soul and pull it down to earth.
Make it practical.
Exactly. We're going to translate its ancient metaphors into a practical psychological framework for how we actually move through, say, a random Tuesday afternoon.
Right.
How we handle overwhelming grief and how we navigate our most complex, demanding relationships.
And what is genuinely remarkable about this material is how it refuses to stay in a single theological lane.
Yeah, it pulls from everywhere.
It really does. It pulls together ancient Hindu cosmology, the inner mystical traditions of Sufism, Greek mystery schools, and Christian contemplation, and it weaves them into one cohesive map of human transformation.
It's wild.
It builds a unified theory of how the soul operates, starting from the smallest microscopic act of breathing, all the way up to navigating profound personal loss.
So let's start at that microscopic level. The foundational image that gives this framework its name is the blue sacred swan.
Yeah, the swan.
Why a swan, and why is it blue? I mean, if we're building a psychological map, what does this creature actually represent for the person listening right now?
Well, think about the physical environment where a swan exists. It is a creature of the threshold.
Okay.
It lives precisely where the water meets the air. It's constantly navigating that boundary where the heavy, dense earth dissolves into the sky.
Oh, I see.
And in these ancient spiritual cartographies, the color blue almost universally represents the infinite.
Like the sky.
Exactly. The color of the celestial vault above us and the deepest unreachable parts of the ocean below us. So a blue swan isn't just a bird.
Right.
It represents an infinite, boundless consciousness that is perfectly navigating the thresholds of a very finite material world.
And crucially, this isn't presented as just a passive image to admire, right? The blue swan is almost like an instruction manual for how to move through your life.
Yes, it is an instruction on how to exist.
Yeah.
The swan moves without aggressive urgency. It isn't frantically flapping or forcing its way through the reeds.
It's graceful.
Right. The framework notes that the swan doesn't have to explain its path or fight the current. Instead, the text says the water always parts for it.
The water always parts for it. I love that.
It points to a psychological state of being where you aren't grasping or striving or trying to muscle your way through your daily obstacles.
Yeah.
You are allowing yourself to be received by the world.
When I hear that, I immediately think about the friction in our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you are listening to this while commuting to work or trying to hit a deadline, your entire nervous system is likely primed for striving. We are taught that if we don't force the water to part, we'll drown.
Right, that hustle mentality.
Yeah. But this text brings in the Hindu concept of the Hamsa to explain how we tap into that effortless movement.
Right, so the Hamsa is the sacred swan. Sometimes it's translated as a goose that serves as the vehicle for the Hindu deities Brahma, who represents creation, and Saraswati, who represents wisdom.
Okay.
But the genius of this concept is that the Hamsa is not just a mythological creature flying around in the heavens. It is literally built into your respiratory system.
Right, literally.
Yes. Hamsa is the primal breath mantra. The phonetic sound, ham, is considered the natural vibration of the inhale.
Ham on the inhale.
And the soundsa is the vibration of the exhale.
Meaning that simply by breathing, you are repeating the name of the swan.
Exactly.
I look at this like Our breathing is an automatic background app running on a smartphone.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. It's always there, keeping the hardware alive, but you never actually look at the code. The moment you bring conscious awareness to your breath, it stops being a background process and becomes an active, deliberate program.
Yeah, you are suddenly running the software on purpose.
Exactly.
And that is the exact mechanism of transformation here. When you take that biological background app and run it consciously, you cross a threshold.
You move from surviving to participating.
Exactly. You actively participate in your own existence. This is why the framework calls the simple conscious breath the most fundamental holy soul ritual there is.
Now, if just breathing consciously qualifies as the ultimate holy soul ritual, we have to completely rethink our definition of what a ritual is.
We really do.
Because I don't need an altar, I don't need a specific prayer book, I don't need to memorize chants. What purpose does a ritual actually serve if it's stripped of all its theatrical performance?
Well, it ceases to be a performance for an audience,
Yeah.
right? And it ceases to be a transaction where you try to, like, bribe the universe for a favor.
Right.
Ritual is redefined here purely as a technology for remembering.
A technology for remembering.
Yeah, going back to the candle analogy we opened with.
Yeah.
You light the candle not to illuminate the physical space, but to shock yourself out of autopilot.
Oh, wow.
You pour water, not because the ground is thirsty, but because your soul is thirsty for contact with the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Rituals are designed to abruptly remind you of the reality beneath ordinary life.
Which leads to a concept that I think will trip a lot of people up.
Probably.
Because the framework argues that this holy soul ritual is not performed for the divine. It is performed as the divine.
Yes. And this is where the material draws heavily on non-dual traditions.
Like which ones?
For instance, Advaita Vedanta, which is a Hindu philosophy, essentially teaching that the observer and the observed are the exact same thing.
Okay.
Or Kashmir Shaivism, or the inner paths of Sufism.
Mm-hmm.
All of these traditions explain simply that the sacred destination you're trying to reach and the traveler who is doing the reaching are the same being.
They're identical.
Right. The world just wears a temporary mask of separation. So when you perform a ritual, you aren't a tiny, insignificant human begging a giant deity in the sky for help.
Yeah.
You are the universe briefly remembering that it is the universe.
I hear you saying that, but I have to push back a little on the psychology of it.
Sure, go.
Because if I wake up on a Tuesday morning and declare, I am doing my morning routine as the divine, that sounds incredibly arrogant to the modern ear.
Oh, it does.
It sounds like the ultimate spiritual ego trip. Like, look at me, I am the supreme being making oatmeal.
It absolutely sounds like a trap for the ego. But the actual practice requires the total opposite of arrogance.
How so?
Arrogance is when your personal ego, your name, your job title, your anxieties, tries to claim the power of the divine for itself.
Right.
But performing a ritual as the divine requires the complete humiliation of the ego. You have to realize that your personal identity is just a costume.
Just a costume.
The text states that in this moment, worship and self-recognition collapse into a single gesture. You aren't elevating your ego to the level of a god. You are entirely erasing your ego so that only the raw, shared consciousness of the universe remains.
So practically speaking, since humans are profoundly ego-driven creatures,
Yeah.
how do we actually do this without just tricking ourselves into feeling spiritually superior?
That's the challenge.
What does the collapse of the ego look like on a random afternoon?
Well, the practical applications are often incredibly uncomfortable. Yeah. It looks like allowing grief to move through your body completely unobstructed.
Oh, that is hard.
Very. When you feel sorrow, the ego instantly tries to manage it. It tries to build a narrative around it, or numb it, or push it away, because the ego hates feeling powerless.
Right, wants control.
Exactly. So to perform the ritual of the swan means to sit entirely still when every instinct screams at you to distract yourself. You let the grief do its clarifying work without interfering. It is the absolute surrender of control.
It's the swan resting on the water, letting the current do what the current does.
Beautifully put. Yes.
So if the internal goal of this ritual is to strip away the ego and allow our true nature to emerge, the framework then moves outward.
Right.
It transitions from the internal space of the mind to the physical, relational world, pointing to birth as the ultimate physical manifestation of this emergence.
Yeah, birth is framed as the ritual that precedes all rituals.
The very first one.
Before humans ever built temples or invented liturgies, the map of spiritual transformation was already written into the biology of birth.
That makes a lot of sense.
It contains a descent into the density of the material world. It involves immense suffering and compression. The labor itself.
Right.
And then it climaxes in emergence, the first breath, and that wordless gaze of recognition between mother and child.
And this biological reality is mirrored in almost every spiritual tradition we have.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Sufis speak of dying before death to find true life. The Hindu tradition speaks of the initiated as being twice born.
Yes.
Christian mystics write extensively about being born again of water and spirit. Spiritual awakening is universally understood as a second birth.
And to unpack the mechanics of this descent and emergence, the framework uses one of the most secretive and profound spiritual traditions of antiquity.
The Greek mysteries.
Yes, the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. For nearly 2,000 years, emperors, philosophers, and ordinary citizens traveled to Eleusis to undergo a deeply secretive initiation.
Which is wild to think about.
It was a massive deal, and it was based on the story of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone, who descends into the underworld.
Now, most of us learn that story in grade school as a quaint myth to explain why we have winter, right? Demeter is sad, her daughter is gone, so the crops die.
Right, a nice little fable.
But the mystery schools weren't teaching meteorology.
Far from it. They use the myth as a highly sophisticated psychological map.
Okay.
Persephone's descent into the dark and Demeter's mourning represents the soul's necessary descent into suffering and its eventual return. And what is vital here is how the mother-daughter relationship functions during that descent.
This was the most paradigm-shifting part of the material for me.
Really?
Yeah, because usually we conceptualize a mother's love as a shield.
Right.
The ultimate biological imperative is to protect the child from the harshness of the world, to keep them safe at all costs. But in this reading of the myth, love does not protect Persephone from transformation.
No, it doesn't.
Love is actually the agent of transformation. Demeter couldn't keep Persephone in permanent safety because safety isn't the goal of the soul's journey. Stagnation is not the goal.
Exactly. Instead of a shield, that love acts as a provision.
A provision.
Yeah. It allows Persephone to carry her mother's warmth with her into the underworld. The divine feminine here, which the mother-daughter bond represents, is not about possession or control.
Right.
It is about transmission. She transmits a quality of presence, a relationship to the sacred, not by handing down a book of laws or strict doctrines, but through an unbroken thread of love that can survive the descent into the dark.
Which brings up a profoundly difficult question for anyone listening who has ever loved someone deeply. We can visualize Persephone carrying the warmth of that love into the dark, but what happens to the person left behind? What happens to Demeter when the person she loves descends into their own underworld? Maybe through addiction, or severe depression, or physical loss, and they are completely cut off from us. How do you cope when the thread of love seems to snap and the world goes cold?
That question bridges us right into the most challenging, demanding concept in this entire philosophical architecture.
Okay.
The framework calls the solution loving faith beyond truth.
Now, when I hear the phrase beyond truth, my immediate thought is that it means abandoning logic entirely.
Sure.
Like living in a state of delusion. If the evidence of a relationship is gone, isn't it just denial to keep reaching out? Is that where this is going?
No, it's distinguishing between conditional faith and radical mystical faith.
Okay, unpack that.
Conditional faith, which is how most of us operate, is transactional.
Right.
It holds up as long as the evidence is there.
Right. You do this, I'll do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have faith in this relationship because you treat me well. I have faith in the divine because my prayers are answered in a recognizable way. We have faith because we have proof that the system is working.
It's an evidence-based return on investment.
Exactly. But loving faith beyond truth is the psychological endurance required when all of that evidence collapses.
Oh, wow.
When the universe is totally silent to the point where it feels like outright abandonment.
Yeah.
Or when the person you love has changed into someone you barely recognize and the relationship is agonizingly messy.
Yeah.
It is Demeter's faith, the agonizing choice to continue loving across the boundary of loss itself.
How does a person actually do that without breaking? I mean, what is the psychological mechanism that allows you to maintain faith when you have zero proof that things will ever get better?
Well, the framework connects this directly to the dark night of the soul.
Oh, John of the Cross.
Yes, mapped out by the 16th century Christian mystic John of the Cross. To understand this, you have to know that John wasn't just having a momentary crisis of doubt. He was physically imprisoned in a tiny windowless cell by his own religious order. He was tortured, isolated, and psychologically stripped of everything that gave his life meaning. He felt entirely cut off from God.
He experienced the total collapse of his spiritual framework.
Total collapse.
Yeah.
And yet, in that total darkness, he continued to reach out. He didn't do it because he had truth on his side. He had no proof he would ever be rescued.
Yeah.
He did it because he realized that his faith didn't depend on a set of theological propositions being correct. He didn't need to know why he was suffering to keep his heart open.
That is incredibly powerful.
It is. Loving faith beyond truth requires only the willingness to remain in the relationship, even when the beloved is entirely cloaked in darkness.
It isn't delusion, because delusion demands that the old reality return.
Right.
This radical faith accepts the painful new reality and simply refuses to close off its heart in response.
Perfectly.
And bringing this back to you, the listener, we live in an era that is obsessed with metrics and proof. If I put in this effort, show me the data that I will get the result.
Show me the ROI.
Exactly. But this cartography of the soul is asking you to do the exact opposite. It's asking you to keep your hands open precisely when it hurts the most without demanding a guarantee that your suffering will pay off.
And the paradox here is that the action itself becomes the payoff.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant quote from the 13th century Sufi poet Rumi used here that captures the mechanism perfectly. He writes, "I am burning in the fire of love, and I am still praising the fire."
Wow. You don't praise the fire because you think it's going to stop burning you.
Right.
You praise it because you are finally awake to the fact that you are in it.
Exactly. You aren't praising a system because it delivered what it promised. You are praising because you've realized that the act of remaining open is the destination.
The openness itself.
Right. The vulnerability isn't a toll you pay on the road to enlightenment. The vulnerability is the arrival.
So we have covered an immense amount of ground here, from the respiratory mechanics of a swan to ancient Greek mystery cults, all the way to a mystic sitting in a 16th century prison cell.
It's quite a journey.
If we pull all of these disparate threads together, how does this map resolve itself into a single cohesive framework for the listener?
Well, the beauty of this material is that these aren't four separate teachings.
Okay.
They are one single current of transformation, just viewed from different angles. We can trace the entire journey right now.
Walk us through the complete map.
Okay, so the blue swan represents your boundless soul, learning to navigate the thresholds of a difficult world gracefully.
Right.
The physical breath of that swan is the holy soul ritual, the constant, quiet, everyday practice of remembering that you and the universe are not separate.
That's the Hamsa.
Exactly. Now, that daily ritual of remembering over a lifetime becomes a continuous second birth. You are constantly choosing to emerge from the dark into your own fullness. That emergence is driven and sustained by the primordial force of a mother's love, the ultimate transmission of presence that gives you the warmth to survive the descent.
Like Demeter and Persephone.
Right. And finally, when that love is inevitably tested by the dark, when the evidence falls away and the world goes silent, it solidifies into loving faith beyond truth.
Wow.
The soul, the ritual, the birth, the love, and the faith, they're all the exact same movement.
It is a stunningly cohesive way to view a human life. And it brings us full circle all the way back to the foundational image we started with. The blue sacred swan resting quietly on the water.
It really does.
Yeah.
And there is a specific detail in the conclusion of this material that perfectly grounds everything we've just explored.
Oh, what is it?
It notes that when the swan descends from the sky, it does not demand that the lake be beautiful before it lands.
Okay.
It doesn't require the water to be a specific, comfortable temperature or for the reeds to be perfectly arranged.
It simply arrives exactly as it is.
Exactly. It arrives. It refuses to strive. It becomes completely present in the water, and the framework states, the lake becomes sacred by receiving it.
The lake becomes sacred by receiving it. That idea takes the cosmic scale of everything we've discussed and brings it right down to the street level.
It really does.
So, as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought to chew on. Think about the physical space you are occupying right now.
Just look around.
Yeah. Maybe you're sitting in traffic or standing in your kitchen or walking down a noisy, mundane street. If the lake becomes sacred simply by receiving the presence of the swan, what happens if you apply that to your own attention?
That's the question.
If you were to fully, consciously arrive in this exact moment, without wishing the circumstances were different, without striving for the next hour to arrive faster, without demanding the water be warmer, how might the utterly ordinary room you are sitting in instantly transform? Can the mundane environment around you become a holy artifact simply because you finally decided to be fully present within it?